Arpon's toe brushed the twisted root at the forest's edge. 10 minutes' walk from the village, and not a single villager had followed. For years, every one of them had repeated the same warning, over and over. Anyone who steps into Blue Shadow Forest never comes out. They spat the words like a curse. They crossed their arms and blocked the path when younger boys dared to ask. But Arpon had never been able to ignore the pull that hummed in his bones. He never fit with the other boys of the village. They spent their days trading carved trinkets and memorizing every old rule, every boundary, every line no one was allowed to cross. Arpon preferred to sit alone by the river, count how many times kingfishers dove for minnows, and listen to the wind hum through the pine needles. To him, it was a conversation no one else bothered to learn. He lifted his foot, stepped over the root. The cool blue gloom wrapped around him at once, soft and cold, cutting off the sound of the village. He sank his bare feet into the thick moss, turned once to glance at the open hills behind him. The village roofs were just visible over the trees. No one was coming after him. He turned back to the forest, took another step forward. The trees closed in behind him. The hair on the back of Arpon's neck stood straight up. A voice echoed off the tree trunks, low and clear, cutting through the quiet hum of the forest. "Who are you?" Arpon spun around, his bare feet sinking deeper into the soft moss. The sound didn't come from behind a tree or from above. It came from a small red shape, sitting still on a fallen log, its eyes glinting like polished black stones. Arpon's chest tightened. He hadn't expected anything like this. "I'm Arpon," he said, and his voice shook less than he expected it to. "I came here to find friends." The fox huffed out a laugh that ruffled its whiskers. "A human looking for friends in the forest? That's interesting. I'm Renu." Renu turned and trotted deeper between the trees. Arpon followed without hesitation. The blue shadow grew deeper, but the air smelled like pine resin and wild honey, and Arpon had never felt more awake. Around the next bend, they found Drubo. The old elephant stood half hidden between two giant trunks, his big, slow eyes fixed steady on Arpon. "Drubo remembers everything," Renu said. "Every tree that has fallen, every storm that swept through the forest 1,000 years back." Drubo rumbled a low greeting, and the vibration shook Arpon's chest right down to his boots. Next came Pihu, a tiny yellow bird that darted down from the canopy and landed light as a feather on Arpon's ear. "I can see what hasn't happened yet," Pihu chirped, fluttering her wings. "It's all bits and pieces, but it's there." Last was Monish, the 100-year-old turtle, who crawled slowly out from a mud hole at the edge of a hidden clearing. "I've been waiting," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "I knew a human would come one day." Arpon's head spun. All of them could speak. All of them were just as alive and sharp as any villager. This forest held magic he had never dared to dream of. Arpon did not go back to the village. He unpacked the small bundle he had brought and made his home in the hidden clearing under the open stars. Every morning, he woke to Pihu's bright chirps circling the treetops. She would dart down, land on his shoulder, and tell him what she saw in the wind that morning. A herd of deer moving through the western grove. A patch of wild blueberries ripening early on the south slope. They would walk for hours, exploring paths the forest had kept hidden for centuries. Renu would lead them past hidden springs that tasted of cold stone. Drubo would stop beside ancient fallen trunks and rumble stories of the storms that brought them down. Monish would crawl slowly beside them, stopping to point out rare mushrooms that tasted like honey, and smooth, flat stones that held the warmth of the sun all night. Arpon ate berries for breakfast, roasted root vegetables over a small fire at night, and slept curled on a bed of pine boughs that smelled clean and sharp. He never had to memorize a rule. He never had to pretend to care about carved trinkets or village boundaries. For 3 weeks, every day felt like a gift. Pihu sang every dawn, every dusk, until the morning she didn't. Arpon woke to silence. No chirps, no fluttering wings. The clearing held its breath. Pihu perched on a low oak branch, her feathers fluffed tight against her small body, every line of her shaking. The entire clearing went dead quiet. Arpon held his breath, waiting. Pihu opened her tiny beak, and only a thin, whimpering sound came out. "I see it," she said. "Darkness is coming. It will swallow the whole forest, turn every green leaf to dry dust. Nothing will be left." Arpon's fingers curled into the pine needles under him. He pushed himself to his feet, his boots pressing into the soft earth of the clearing. Drubo lifted his big head, and his trunk swayed slowly back and forth, the movement stretching the silence longer. Long ago, this forest's power was held in the life core. He rumbled, a glowing stone that keeps every root, every leaf, every creature alive. When the first human explorers came, centuries ago, we hid it deep in the forest. We hid it so well that we forgot where we put it. Rinu's tail flicked once, sharp and tense. "Without the core, the magic dies," she said. "And when the magic dies, the forest dies with it." Monish pulled his head slowly into his shell, then pushed it out again, his old eyes heavy. "We've waited for hundreds of years," he said. "Waited for someone who could find it again. No one has ever dared to try." Arpon brushed pine needles and dry dirt from his legs. His throat felt tight, but his voice came out steady and clear, loud enough for every one of them to hear. "Then we find it," he said. "I came here for friends. This forest is my home now. I won't let it turn to dust." They set out at dawn the next day, moving single file through the deepening blue shadow. Arpon walked first, his boots silent on the soft moss. 3 hours in, the air turned thin and cold. Wispy grey shapes began drifting between the trunks, their low moans winding through the branches and settling in Arpon's bones. "They feed on fear," Rinu whispered, her voice tight against Arpon's side. "They scare travelers off the path so they get lost and starve. They don't want anyone near the core." The largest spirit drifted forward, its form shifting and stretching. It solidified into the shape of Arpon's village headman, his face twisted into a scowl, just like Arpon remembered it. The scowl that had chased Arpon out of the village square a dozen times for wandering too close to the forest. Arpon did not run. He did not reach for the sharp knife at his belt. He stepped forward, his hands open and empty at his sides. "You don't have to do this," he said. "You scare people because it's the only way anyone ever looks at you, isn't it? You're lonely." The spirit stopped shifting. It hung motionless in the mist, the scowl melting back into wispy grey. "No one has ever talked to us like that," it whispered, its voice thin as spider silk. "We've been here guarding the path for centuries. Everyone runs. Everyone fights." Arpon nodded. "What if you come with us?" he said. "You can tell us your stories of the old forest. We'll listen." The spirit pulsed soft silver, warm instead of cold. It called out to the other spirits, and the whole mist lightened. One by one, they drifted closer, no longer moaning, no longer shifting. They let the group pass, and fell into step beside them, ready to tell every story they had held for 1,000 years. They walked another 2 hours, with the spirits walking beside them, telling old stories of floods and fallen stars, until the ground dropped away and the river roared up from below. Arpon leaned over the bank and stared. The water flowed uphill, bubbling and frothing, churning over sharp rocks that jutted up through the surface. "No bridge spans it," Monish rumbled, his voice slow and heavy. "Anyone who tries to swim gets pulled up and over the cliff at the top. No one has crossed in 500 years. Arpon knelt at the bank, his eyes fixed on the water. He counted 3 large dead logs that bobbed past, light enough to float, moving steadily uphill with the current. "They're carried by the current," he said. "If we tie 3 big logs together, we can ride the current up to the other side." Drubo used his sharp tusk to cut 3 dry, light logs from the dead pines along the bank. Renu chewed through tough vine to make lashings, and Arpon tied the 3 logs tight together into a flat raft. They climbed on, and the river grabbed the raft immediately, pulling it steadily uphill. The raft wobbled once, near the cliff edge, then steadied. 10 minutes later, they stepped out onto the opposite bank, dry and laughing. The last challenge stood half a mile ahead. The mouth of the slow cave, black and gaping between rock walls. "Inside, time moves so slowly that a minute feels like an hour," Monish said. "Many who enter stay trapped there, until their bodies turn to stone." They walked in, and at first Arpon felt fine. Then his steps got heavy, his breathing slowed to a crawl. He looked at Renu, and her trot had slowed to a creep, each step taking a full minute to complete. He forced his eyes to stay focused on the faint glow of the cave mouth ahead. He thought of the darkness coming for the forest. "If we stop, we lose everything." He dragged 1 foot forward, counted to 10 under his breath, then dragged the other. It took him an hour of slow, grinding effort to cover the 50 yards to the exit. When he stepped out into the sun, his legs shook so bad he almost fell. He turned, reached back into the cave, and pulled Renu out by the scruff of her neck. Then he coaxed Pihu forward, helped Drubo drag his bulk over the threshold, and waited for Monish to crawl slow out of the dark. All 5 of them stood on solid rock outside the cave, breathing hard, every muscle screaming, but they were free. They rested for 10 minutes, catching their breath and rubbing the stiffness out of their legs, then turned toward the heart of the forest. Another hour of walking brought them to a clearing open to the sky, and at its center stood the great ancient tree. Its trunk rose straight up, so high the top vanished into the blue shadow, and its bark was grooved deep enough for Arpon to sit inside one of the cracks. The ground under Arpon's boots trembled. A low voice rumbled up from the bark, so deep it vibrated in his teeth. "The life core is here, but only a true friend can claim it." Arpon stepped forward, his hand outstretched toward the trunk. Nothing happened. The ground stayed still. No light glowed from the earth. No hum rose in the air. He stepped back, frowning, and let his hand fall to his side. He thought of the warning Pihu had given, of the darkness creeping in to turn every leaf to dust. He did not come here to take a magic stone for himself. He did not come to be a hero or to carry power back to the village. He looked at Renu sitting quiet at his feet, at Drubo's bulk shifting against the trees, at Pihu perched on a low branch, at Monish crawling slow to the tree's edge. He looked at the blue shadows dancing over the moss, at the pine needles swaying in the soft wind, at the whole forest that had felt more like home than any village square ever had. "This forest is my friend," he said, loud enough for the tree's ancient heart to hear. "I don't want to take the core, I just want it to stay." The light exploded outward from the tree's root, rolling through the clearing in a bright blue wave that stretched to the edge of the trees. It washed over the moss, turning faded gray patches bright and thick. It curled around every trunk, seeped into every crevice of the bark, and pushed out the rot that had been eating at the wood. Arpon lowered his hand and let the light wash over him. It was warm, like sunlight through thin cloud, and it carried the smell of rain on pine and wild clover. The first wave rolled out of the clearing, down the slope toward the slow cave. The stone walls that had held trapped travelers for centuries softened, and the slow time inside drained away, making the cave safe again for anyone who passed. The second wave rolled past the backward river. The current slowed. It bubbled once, then stopped. For a long 10 seconds, the water hung still, suspended between the banks. Then, it turned. It roared downhill, just like any normal river, clear and clean, carrying fallen debris out to the lower valley. The third wave reached the land of shadow spirits. The grey wisps that had been hungry and restless settled into their clearings, their edges softening from sharp, hungry shapes to quiet, glowing mist. They no longer needed to scare people to be seen. Fresh green buds burst open on every dead and dying branch, swelling and unfurling into full leaves in the space of a breath. The cold blue gloom that had hung over the forest for months lifted, turning soft and warm, alive with the hum of growing things. Pihu darted up from Arpon's shoulder, her wings fluttering fast, and chirped so loud her voice echoed off the trees. The future changed. The darkness is gone. It's all good now. The sun dipped low behind the western mountains, painting the tops of the trees pink and gold. Arpon turned to his friends, and his throat tightened a little. The village would wonder where he had gone. He could not stay here forever. Not yet. Renu trotted to his side and pressed her soft red head against his open palm. "I knew you would have to go back," she said. "But you don't have to stay gone forever. Whenever you need us, call. We will hear." Pihu darted down and brushed the tip of her wing against Arpon's cheek, then fluttered back up to the canopy. "I'll watch for you," she chirped. "I'll tell you when the wild berries are ripe." Drubo rumbled a low, warm greeting that vibrated up through Arpon's boots. "The path will stay clear for you," he said. "Always." Monish crawled slow to Arpon's feet and tapped his boot with the edge of his shell. "We'll be waiting," he said. "No matter how long it's been between visits." Arpon nodded. He did not say anything more because words would not have fit the tightness in his throat. He turned and walked back along the path he had cut with his friends, step by step, out of the deep blue shadow toward the edge of the forest. The moon rose full and bright over the trees by the time he stepped out onto the village common. He did not tell anyone about the forest. He did not tell anyone about the talking fox, the old elephant, the bird who saw the future, the turtle who had waited 100 years for him. He knew the villagers would not understand. They would only repeat the old warning, call him a liar, or try to cut down the trees to find the magic for themselves. He fit a little better with the other boys after that, but he did not push to join their games or memorize their rules. At night, he would lie on his straw mat, look up through the gaps in the thatch roof at the stars, and smile. He knew Blue Shadow Forest is still there, and his secret friends are waiting whenever he comes.